Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season two of Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my friends at Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. Printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free, to their 24 hours to customer support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. You can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials, and the company has also printed many successful Kickstarter campaigns, and some of them you have even seen and heard about on my very show. And with services offered all throughout the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, Mixum can print and reach your audiences anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to mixum.com, and listeners of my show can actually drop my name right now, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order to get a 5% discount on their first order. That's mixam.com. Type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab, and you can get 5% off your first order. So welcome back to my returning guest, David Booher. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so happy to hear you got a sponsor. You're leveling up. This is amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And then obviously it's making season three happen. Season two is finishing up, December. And then January 6th, we're launching season three and we're gonna hit the ground running. But obviously you got a lot of stuff going on. And we're really only gonna be talking about two things this entire interview, and that is Canto and Killer Queens, which I absolutely love. And so obviously I think we should start with Kanto because that's what you're known for. As we were stating before, my comic from CBCS is getting pressed as it's being spoken that you and Drew signed. And so for those who don't know, and I know that if you haven't heard about Kanto yet, I know where you've been, what is the basic premise of Kanto before we dive into some of the nitty gritty of it?
Sure. So for anybody who's not familiar, Kanto is, I will pull off my reference from the shelf right behind me. This is Kanto, and he's a little clockwork knight in search of a heart. His people have been enslaved, and they're not allowed to have names, and they're not allowed to care for one another. Their hearts have been removed and replaced with clocks. And when the time is up, that's it. But Kanto sort of defies all of that. He's got a name. He's in love with a little clockwork girl. And when her clock gets damaged beyond repair, he has to go out in his great big fantastical worlds to find where they take their hearts to bring hers back to save her. So what I like to say is part fantasy, part adventure, and all heart. So
Yes,
that's
I
Kanto.
love Kanto because Kanto, as we spoke about before, was very much a sleeper comic, and then it just got red hot. And then obviously the first arc did phenomenal, and then the second one is that they're sort of realizing that now they're sort of getting freed, but they have to solve the issue that they need to almost work and be on a clock regimen to survive. And then it's also sort of finding the solution to that problem and facing monsters. And then obviously that's very interesting how the world has expanded in a lot of ways. So, because that's Kanto 2, and then obviously we have some Kanto one-shot stuff coming out. We got the Kanto Fairy one-shot. And so what is this like really to play in this world?
I mean, everybody talks about playing in different sandboxes, right? It's pretty fun to create your own sandbox that you then get to play in. So there's no boundaries. There's, whatever we want to do, we can do. So we did Kanto, If I Only Had a Heart, which was 6 issues, and then we did a one-shot, Kanto and the Clockwork Fairies, where it's just a single issue of him encountering a race of fairies and helping them. And then I call them side quests. And then the main quest continues in Kanto 2, The Hollow Men, where Kanto and his people discover that there are many different types of captivity, and sometimes you can't see the bars. And so they've got a new challenge ahead of them that Kanto goes out on another quest to solve to help his people. And then after that concluded, we did a 3-issue side quest called Kanto in the City of Giants. And the momentum is building toward a big final confrontation. And so City of Giants, and then we just started Kanto 3 Lionhearted, uh, the issue 1 came out in July, and that's continuing to build the momentum. Kanto now sees that there is a war coming, and his people can't stand on their own, so he needs allies. And the allies that he seeks out are ones that are very unlikely, but the ones that he thinks can help him and his people the most. And then next year we will be concluding the Kanto verse saga, I guess, with Kanto 4, A Place Like Home, which is the final resolution of everything that we've built towards from that first issue all the way till the last issue of Kanto 4. So I think I'm thinking about it. I think we're going to end up, I think we're on issue 15 right now, if you're counting in sequence. No, that's not right. 6, 12, 15. We're on issue 17 now, counting in sequence. There'll be 22. There'll be at least, I think it's going to conclude in 28 or 29 issues total. And then we'll see what happens after that. But we've got this like epic story mapped out. It's like Lord of the Rings, right? We know there's tons more to do in that world, but Return of the King sort of wrapped it up so nicely for them.
And even to talk about some of this, because I do want to talk about Lionheart, because obviously I legitimately a week ago got my second copy from where I buy my shops and I buy, my comics offline. And I'm super excited. And obviously my comic budget is tightening up, but I'm definitely picking up this from IDW. It's the only title I'm right now picking up from IDW because I really enjoy Kanto. And I enjoy it from a story standpoint, and I'm super excited for what's coming down the pike in a lot of ways for it. But what was it like to do Kanto in the City of Giants? Because Drew took a bit of a break for that 3-parter, and he was doing some variant cover work, I know, but also having a new artist and having a different, art style. And obviously, you're writing it, and what is that like? Because that adds a different flavor to it, and it's very cool. Because while it's canon to some degree, it's also nice to say, hey, we're just shifting it up a little bit, and I appreciated that a lot because it's nice to get a little bit of a different style and also work with a little bit of a different artist on the same property. Sure. Everybody has their own interpretation of something. And so what was that like? Because it is very nice to have that 3-parter that really sort of leads right into Canto 3.
Yeah, so it was Sebastian Perez, who is fantastic. He did, oh gosh, thinking back now, I think he did a variant cover for us. I can't remember when now. There's been so many covers, but I'm familiar with Sebastian's work, and I've always really admired it. And when we reached out to him and asked if he wanted to do this, we had him draw Kanto because that's the most important thing, is to make sure that you're on model with Kanto. And he came back and he was so close. And we had just a few little tweaks, but he sort of captured the tone of the world and everything. So we knew right away that he was the right fit for this. Amazing creator to work for, and everybody should hire him. He's so good, and he's dependable, and he's super easy with notes and everything. From my perspective, we did it for two reasons. One was to give Drew some time to work ahead on Lionhearted, because our schedule gets to be so crammed when we have 6 issues coming out in sequence that it's hard. And Kanto 2 ended in January, so that wasn't between January and July. There's not that much time to work ahead. So we wanted to give Drew extra time, but also fill that space. So we did the 3 issues. I also wanted to kind of show that Kanto lives in this world of story that it's kind of like a license. It acts a little like a licensed property where you can bring artists in and out. And as long as they have the design for Kanto right and his people correct, they can kind of come in and out, and we can continue on with the story. So it's not necessarily that it's just always me and Drew, that this is a world, this is a sandbox that other people can play in as well. And I think that really proved it. We did some, people really enjoyed City of Giants. It turns out from, looking back on it now. So it was a really successful sort of side quest, like I said. It's a very
Yeah,
successful
that's very
side
much
quest.
what it is in a lot of ways, is that I viewed it as a side quest. And for those who don't know about comics, if you have a monthly project, you need to be able to get something out every single month,
Yeah.
because it creates bigger problems when you're dealing with a company like Diamond. And obviously Canto's and IDW is the publisher. And so, the last thing they want to do is have comic shops being backed up with things that are in their control to some degree. Obviously, with COVID and Diamond shutting down, every company was out of luck, and that was out of a bunch of companies' controls. But the idea is that the last thing you want is, Drew to not be able to, get a page done and get the book, and the book comes out a week later, because that affects a lot of other things.
Oh yeah.
And so,
No, yeah.
yeah,
So we build time. We build time into our schedule, and we build, big chunks of time, and then skip month here or there just to make sure that we're on track. Because you're right, the shops depend on books come in on the Wednesday that they're supposed to come in, and when they don't have those books, they don't have the product on shelves and that sort of thing. So we try to stay on track as much as we possibly can. So far, so good. Knock on wood, right?
and then obviously, City of Giants leads right into Lionheart, which is Canto 3. And I don't know if I want to give too much away, because obviously the first two issues came out. I know the covers for 3 and 4 are up on IDW's website. And basically, there is a war on the horizon. And, well, they're about to deal with the Shrouded Man, who may or may not have had something to do with the enslavement of Kanto and his people. And, well, this might be what is known as very much a fight for, breaking away and now living more in peace, or having less conflict, or having full protection, or eliminating a massive threat or crippling a threat and delaying it for centuries to come. And so obviously there's something going on, and there may or may not be an equalizer in play, and there's a lot of stuff
Oh,
going on.
we can talk about it because it's out there. It's not a
I don't
spoiler
want
at
to
this
ruin it
point.
for people too much, because I want people who haven't picked up the first two issues to obviously pick up the first two issues. I'm
Yeah,
trying to make
yeah,
money
no,
here.
come, yeah. But I think we can share that going into Canto 3, number 1. Um, Kanto's looking for allies, and he's identified allies from his past who are unlikely, but he sees that um, not only does he need them, but there is a threat that the Shrouded Man will get there first. So not only will Kanto lose those allies, but the Shrouded Man might get them. So he's got to get there first and do his best to convince them to fight for their freedom. When these are a race of people who have shown over and over again that they are cowards in the face of danger, and he's got to convince them to take the path of courage, and he may or may not do that.
And so it's getting very interesting, because there's a lot of philosophical stuff behind this. There's also a lot of people's interests. Kanto has an interest. These people have an interest, because, well, the alternative for these cowards is that they might become enslaved. They might wind up getting killed. Obviously, the
Yeah,
Shrouded Man might have his own use for them. And now it becomes a whole bigger thing of, okay, how do you convince people? And then, well, now also, how do you get people to lay down their lives and their
right.
sentience, for lack of a better word here? And it becomes what is worth fighting for in a lot of ways. And I mean, we've seen certain things, and some of these people are going to be easier to convince than others. And also, there's been conflict with some of these people as well in this. And so there's a lot of stuff going on
Yeah,
with this. And how did you figure out? And then obviously, both armies, I guess, for lack of a better word, are moving to get to allies first and capture them.
yeah,
And it's becoming a very, very high stakes. And it's clear that now that you mentioned Canto 4 is coming, we know that the showdown is going to start either at the end of Canto 3 or beginning of Canto 4. And we're going to have 6 issues of a real fight, and it's
there
getting.
will be a there will be a massive cliffhanger at the end of this. And I just want to forewarn everybody who's Kanto fans is that there's going to be a gap of time between when we finish this in issue 6, which I think is coming out in January, and when Canto 4 starts coming out, because again, we wanna work ahead as much as we can in
And what
22.
you mean by a gap of time is you don't mean a gap of time in the story. You just
No, no,
mean
no. The gap of time in the story will be very minuscule, but the gap of time in the release will be. We're looking at October of next year to start that Canto 6. So there might be something that we're doing in between to fill the gap. Plus Canto 3, the trades will come out during that time, and but again, we want to make it the best it could possibly be, and giving ourselves more time to prepare for that. To stick the landing is important.
well, IDW might not want me to say this, but if Canto 4 is coming out in October, New York Comic Con might have a variant, would not surprise me, and it might be a very, very high-end variant. And I don't know anything about it, not putting you on the spot here, but I think it's a very high likely at that point, because given it's a big event in the Kanto
Oh,
universe,
New York Comic Con.
fingers crossed, fingers crossed. I'm just
Well,
saying.
that
So
I'm sure if our number one is released anywhere around New York Comic Con, we'll do a convention variant because they seem to do really well. So we will definitely be
those are the
looking
nice
into that.
ones.
Yeah. I mean, but
Those
it's
are
the
the
end
ones.
game, dude. It's the end game. We've everything is built up to this moment, and we have the ending. I have the ending in my mind, and I've had it all along, and I know exactly what's going to happen. And I think I would be satisfied if I were a reader of Kanto. Like if I was just a fan, I would be very satisfied with how it's all going to end at the end of the day. So, um, yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. It's every step getting to that end game is exciting, and then seeing that on the horizon is
Well,
pretty wild.
I know how it's going to end too, and I'm going to spoil it. Dumbledore dies. So I want to make that crystal clear here.
You
That,
killed Dumbledore.
so
How dare
have you?
you?
And so I'm very excited for where this is going because obviously I think issue 3 is coming out in September. Issue 4 is coming out in October. November, December, I think is when.
We're gonna have a skip month in October. So issue 3 comes out in September. I think it's like um the week of Labor Day maybe. Then October we're doing a skip month to make sure we can stay on track. So it will be November, December, January will be 4, 5, and 6.
And so obviously that's all coming out, and it's going to be very exciting in January when this thing drops, and I can't wait for it because obviously I've read the first 2 issues, and I'm stoked for it. And then the other side of this, because you're doing double duty, and I know you can't talk too much about it, but I think it's safe to say the Kanto movie is happening now. I think there's been enough press release on that where it's
Oh
not a
yeah, 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 yeah.
anymore. And you're obviously an executive producer, you're working on the screenplay. And so, what is that like? Because isn't that everybody's dream to have their project wind up become a movie? And it's not like it's a live action. I mean, this is going to be anime and animation, and it looks very much Pixar animation. And Kanto was made for movies.
Well, yeah, so it's obviously super exciting. Also a little daunting, you get the nerves. You get the nerves of making sure that the heart of it stays in there. But with Drew and I continuing to be involved in the adaptation, it's um I think readers are happy that we'll be able to do our best to preserve the core of what Kanto is and the story that we tell with him, which I hope will be very similar to what that first arc is, and we'll see where it goes from there. Uh, we're in development right now with Westbrook Studios, so we'll see where we ultimately end up and what information we're able to share. But yeah, so things are progressing.
And I'm just going to let everybody know that if you have a Canto 1, this is the time to get it graded. And if David or Drew is at a convention, it's a good time to get it signed too. I'm just saying because the way this movie looks and what I know, and if it's anything even close to the first arc, it's going to be phenomenal. The way it's going to go, and I'm very excited for it.
I mean, it's just I really hope so. I think that all the parts are there. So putting them together in the right order is like the alchemy of making stories, right?
And obviously, I'm not going to press too much further into this because I'm sure you can't talk about certain things, but
Right.
I do want to talk about something that is still Kanto related. And I think it sort of plays into how big Kanto is that CBCS had a signing, and you signed back in April, Drew signed and remarks, and we were speaking a little bit before, and my book, as I stated, is impressing right now. And you had I think like 4 big boxes of stuff sent in and through private signing. And obviously, I'm sure there was Canto 1s and Canto 2s and sets of Canto stuff in there. And so obviously a lot of people love it. And given that cons aren't happening, what is that like for you? Because obviously people want their stuff. And when you get that and you're at a signing and it's private signing and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, obviously, it sort of says, oh man, we're on to something here to some degree that people want to get this stuff graded and want
Sure.
signatures. And it must be cool to be like, oh my God, I have to sign this book 90 times now.
Yeah, it's it's great. Again, you just it's like you're just nervous. You're so nervous you're gonna script your signature or do something. Uh, yeah, it's great. And we didn't get it wasn't all just Canto ones. So I think it was people who just really wanted, Canto signed and graded. So we had City of Giants in there, we had Canto 2 in there, we had some Clockwork Fairies in there, we had all kinds of different the Kanto from the first arc issues. So it was really great, and the folks at CBCS were fantastic, um, putting it all together and making that all happen. So I think from everybody's perspective, it worked really well.
And also, what's super nice is that I'm sure there are cons that you've gone to that Drew hasn't gone to, and Drew's gone to a bunch of cons that you weren't at. And people obviously want both your
Oh,
signatures.
sure,
And that's
yeah,
the other thing that's nice too, is that you're both signing the book on the same day in the same thing, and it minimizes risk to the book, and it's the idea that, oh, now I'm getting both signatures, and as a fan, it's very, very cool when that happens, and also remarks were offered. And so there was a lot of stuff that was super cool about this, meaning that, oh, this is something that was really cool, and that's something that I really like. And I think it just speaks to how big Kanto is. And I don't think that it would have been as important as it was during the pandemic of all this happening, or at the start of the pandemic, I should say.
right, yeah. I mean, that's we weren't doing any signings at all, so having something like this is great. Um, we try to Drew and I appeared in 2019 in a couple of cons together, so that was fun. And until we can get back to it, I think this is what we're going to be doing: is just shuttling books back and forth on the East Coast, West Coast to try to get all those signatures.
And so obviously that's something that is very cool. But I want to back out of Kanto because I don't want to ruin too much. And if we keep going, I'm going to spoil the entire movie for everybody. And I'm sure Westbrook and IDW are not going to be too happy with you or me on that point. But I do want to talk about something that is way more interesting, I think, right now. And I think it's some of your best work so far, and that's Killer Queens.
Oh,
And
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
so it's a weird book,
It's
and
so different. Yeah,
it's so outside of it's not Kanto. It's not even related to Kanto. And I say this in the nicest way I possibly can say it, where it's definitely humorous. It's a little bit more racier. It's a little bit more
yeah,
adult.
for more adults. Yeah,
I think you're a 13-year-old. It's appropriate for a 13-year-old. If I had an 8-year-old,
totally.
I wouldn't feel comfortable giving it to my 8-year-old right now.
Yeah,
But obviously, what is the premise of Killer Queens? Because it is a brand new book that came out, I think last week.
yeah. So the way I pitch it is we brought together an all LGBTQ creative team to make what I affectionately refer to as Guardians of the Galaxy. Um, so it's
You can say
not,
that. I can't.
yeah. Well, that's there. Here we are. Here we are. Um, Yeah, so Max and Alex are reformed. They're gay reformed intergalactic assassins for hire. They're on the run from their former boss, who's a fluffy monkey with a jetpack. They stole his ship, and of course, they got to eat. So they take their next job, which is a no-kill kidnapping extraction on a nearby moon. But it's ruled by fascists, so um, everything goes exactly according to plan, or it doesn't. And hijinks ensue. It's a lot of one-liners. It's a lot of racy fun, um, and we infused a lot of what I love, which is retrofuturism. So it's what the 1950s thought the 2000s might look like, and it's colorful and it's just very tongue-in-cheek. And I will say that the one thread that ties that and Kanto together is my passion for telling the story, because Killer Queens was something that I really, for a long time, wanted to tell, both from a representation standpoint and from just it's freaking fun. It's like some people take it way too seriously, and I just step back and I think it, it wasn't meant to be Game of Thrones, people, or Star Wars. It wasn't meant to be Star Wars, people. So just have fun and roll with it. So
See that's what I like about it is that it is fun. I find it very much like eating a cupcake type of like Star Wars. Like if you were eating a big sugary, nice, big
it's
fluffed up.
dessert. It's dessert. You want a meal? Star Wars. Go to Star Wars is out there. You want a cupcake with a Katy Perry soundtrack? Go to Killer Queens.
And I love the fact that they're taking the next job, and the person whose job is, I think it's Alex's old flame, and it's like your ex gets you the job, and then you're dealing with you have rules where you can't kill anybody, so now like your hands are semi tied behind your back, and
Yes.
then you're going to the moon, and then you're dealing with a fascist dictator, and then it's like, okay, this should be an easy job, and then it's not, and then everything is going wrong, and it's really just a fun book to
Fun.
read.
Thank you.
It's also very different for Dark Horse in a lot of ways, because Dark Horse does this book, and it's kind of a very cool thing that Dark Horse is doing.
Yeah.
And also what I like about it is that it's only, I think, 5 issues, so
Four.
4 issues, so it's not even a big economic commitment as far as for me, and I've been moving slightly to that because spending $3 every month on a 50-issue arc, it gets expensive really
It's
quick.
too much. Yeah.
So
It's too much, and the commitment is too much. So yeah, we wanted to do 4 issues. We wanted to come in and get out, and it's doing well. And I hope word continues to spread and it continues to do well. And then Dark Horse says, well, let's do a volume 2. So we bring the characters back, but it's a new standalone story. It's a season 2, season 3, and we'll keep doing it, but it won't be an ongoing type
so
thing.
so so that's super interesting because obviously one of the things I like about Kanto and also this is that you're doing a 5, 6 issues or 4 issues, and you say, hey, if people like it, I'll bring back a season 2. And season 1 will be relevant to some degree, but it's not going to be ultra relevant to the point where you could jump in on season 2, and then as long as people are buying it, I can always add more and continue the next adventure, versus the idea of having to do it all in one shot. And so I find that is the way comics are going to some degree. So I'm curious how you feel about it, because I obviously am more of a fan at the moment, and I'm more on the investing side of things, but I see almost mini series or limited run series versus big 50-issue arcs, and also big one shots are sort of the new, I guess, king of the
Yeah.
mountain, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. So I, I, for TV, I love anthology series where they switch up things every season. So you don't necessarily have to, super huge investment in 6 seasons of like a serialized story. And I like that in comics too, because I can't get to the shop every Wednesday or even monthly, to pick up a series that just keeps going and going and going. And I also think I'm very much of the mindset that character is more important than plot. And so create characters like Kanto and hopefully like Killer Queens, where you can take those characters and you can put them in new stories. People like the characters, but they don't, you can put them in whatever plot you want. And as long as they like the characters, they'll keep following those characters. So uh, that's what I love about Killer Queens. It's going to be a 4 issue. Their sort of mission is quote unquote accomplished or not, who knows. Um, but then we can take these two characters who hopefully people have liked in the first arc and just pluck them into some new hijinks in the second arc and do another
And
four
even
issues
going
there.
further, if you like these two characters, who's to say that they can't make a cameo in another issue of a series that you invent somewhere in Dark Horse? Like, one of the things about podcasting is that I could plop this interview in whatever is the hottest social media platform out there. And
Sure.
that's the whole point of what I'm interested in doing, is that so I could very well see, obviously I don't think they would appear in Kanto, but if you create another series for Dark Horse, why couldn't they show up in that series and,
Right.
they just make a cameo appearance, and then they're sort of crossing right through the comic into so you have the first arc here, your new book here, and they cross right through if it's in space. It'll be so perfect in so many ways.
Yeah, there's an idea that I'm working on that's also set in space, and I think it'd be so fun to have it. And it's tonally different from Killer Queens, but I think it would be so fun to have them just sort of ships passing, right?
Oh, it'll be brilliant, and also it'll be great if you don't tell anybody for a bunch of issues, and then you just slightly
let it be an
mention
Easter egg. Yeah,
just a little Easter egg perfectly in there. It'd be
sure,
brilliant in so many ways.
sure.
So,
Yeah,
so
so Killer Queen's just out for a week now, and yeah, go pick it up at your local shop. Come on board of this wacky space adventure.
and then obviously even going further into this, because this is also unique because it's an all LGBTQ creative team. And so that's something that's also unique, where obviously that has been very much on Kickstarter. There's been projects like that, but I don't know in comics in the mainstream, and I think Dark Horse is mainstream to some degree,
Sure.
that's ever happened before. And I could be wrong.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating to watch the release of this because, release. I'll just describe it this way: there's a lot of folks that go into comic shops where this would not be of interest to them, and so it's been very interesting to see the market react to that. It's finding the audience that's going to enjoy it, and I don't think it's an all LGBTQ audience that this appeals to. I think if you like fun, if you like funny, it will appeal to a broader audience. It's just it's that audience is spread out. So when you have comic shops that have, a particular clientele or regulars or whatever, it doesn't fit within that normal single issue sort of rubric that a lot of comic shop goers look for. So I think it's going to be fascinating to watch it in the trade, where it goes into a lot of bookshops, bookstores. It goes on Amazon online, and just really takes on a new and different kind of life in the collective form, because it's hitting the broader. It's got broader exposure to more people who would want to come on board to something like this. So it's been a long, fascinating rollout, Andrew. That's for sure. I'm glad to say I haven't been the subject of any sort of negativity, which I think is really refreshing.
Yeah, and even going further, because also there's been something very cool that's happened where Yoshitani, I want to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
did a variant cover, and I got most likely the name wrong.
I think you got it right. Yoshitani.
I know Yoshi has a Kickstarter coming out, I think, in a few days, and I think that was for TFAW. I could be mistaken on whose variant that was, but
That's things from another world.
So obviously, what is that like? Because that's cool too. And I know that maybe, obviously you didn't do the art, but it's still your work. And having a variant cover for a comic shop that has 3 or 4 stores and it's a big shop on the West Coast. What is that like? Because it is very cool to have that. And Yoshi's work is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. It's been great, and the idea that Things from Another World hopped onto this series that nobody, we were promoting, but nobody's read or seen, and committed to, I think it was like 1,250 print run of an exclusive cover. I think it's fantastic. Uh, it's such a vote of confidence for the book. The Yoshi's cover is so funny and fun, and just hits the tone of the series perfectly. And I think it's the only variant we did. We did retailer. We did diamond variants. So you have an A cover, a B cover, and a C cover, but that's the only like limited retailer exclusive variant that we did. And I can't. I'm not going to sort of reveal any details or anything, but if folks are looking for a variant to pick up for Killer Queens #1, it's that Things from Another World variant, because I think that's going to be gone, and I think folks are going to want to have a copy of that going forward.
Oh, that's a hint. And you're speaking to the comic book investors, so that's a hint for you. And if
I would
this,
also pick up the Jen Bartel cover. That's
or you just want it to sell out because this way, next time TFAW goes, they're going to order 1,500. That's what it's really about, isn't it?
yeah, no, it's all of that. It's a rich tapestry, Andrew. But I'm serious. Jump on board on this series, because if I'm doing my best to make it a rewarding um, investment. We will put it like that.
Or it's just a good story. It's one or the
I
other.
mean, there's that.
And obviously, the way comics are going is that you don't know what's going to be eventually picked up by Netflix or turned into a movie. And obviously, as things are moving, more and more obscure things are winding up getting picked up. So you never know at this point. It could very well be that in 3 years from now, we're talking about a 12 episode Netflix series of Killer Queens on Netflix, for instance, or on HBO or on Amazon or anything like that.
I think it would be cool. I think it would be a cool, uh, like animation, adult animation, like Archer style, like the sensibility of Rick and Morty with the irreverence of Archer.
And so obviously there's just a lot of stuff that can go with this. And as I stated, I mean, I read it digitally. It was just easier to read it digitally on my iPad. And I didn't really feel like paying for shipping. And I sort of missed the boat on my preview orders. And so I read it digitally. And maybe at some point I will try to find it physically. But again, shipping is just expensive now.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not a fan of like $10 shipping. is what's going on.
Brutal. It's brutal. Yeah, I think there are copies on shelves at various shops. So yeah, and issue 2 comes out, I think, September 22nd.
So there's a lot of stuff, and obviously there's a bunch of time. It's been out for a week, and I think it's if you know certain shops probably have bought a bunch of the regular cover. Obviously, the TFAW, you have to buy it directly from them, or you have to buy it from eBay if they ran out of it, and well, you're going to pay double probably on eBay. So good luck with everybody there.
Don't give eBay your money. Just buy it for cover price.
If you're smart, you should do that. But if you can't, once it sells out, it's going to go all the way to the moon.
I know, it's funny to watch the market sometimes.
I know because I'm part of it, and I'm the worst. It's so clear. I don't pretend here. I'm all about the Benjamins,
Right, exactly.
It's terrible. It's so terrible. But obviously, I do want to back out of this stuff because I don't want to ruin this either. And obviously, that's what's going on. I know you have a Firefly story. I think that's coming out soon as well, if it's not already out. So that's kind of cool too. And is Boom Firefly?
Yeah. So Boom has Firefly, and I got to work with them on this super uh, fun uh, one shot, oversized one shot. So it's 40 pages. Simon and River story about, if you're familiar with Firefly, it's about how it's telling the story of how Simon broke River out of the academy to get her onto Firefly when, just before the pilot episode of Firefly starts. She's, yeah, she's in the crate, and it's how Simon got her from Osiris in the academy onto Firefly in that crate.
And so obviously people love Firefly, and just getting to
I
work.
love Firefly right there, dude. That's not
I
even
know.
set dressing. That's just like my shelf behind me, and it's all the Fireflies there. It's my favorite sci-fi franchise. So
And so obviously you're a fan, and it's very cool. And Boom is a very interesting studio right now, and a very interesting company with what they're doing. Obviously, I have particular books, Magic the Gathering and WWE out of Boom are my go-to things that I love that Boom is producing. And there's some really interesting comics coming out. And obviously Firefly is cool and all that stuff. And it's just cool to be attached to it and get to work on it because more so than anything else, if you're a fan of a project, well, you're adding to it. And I don't know
yeah,
how.
so
Yeah.
that's that. I mean, that's probably the most amazing part, because if I got to make a list of the 5 licensed stories out there that are made in comics that I could write stories for, I think Firefly would be number one. And to have the stars align to be able to be available when they reached out to me to do this is pretty spectacular. It's like, check that off the off the
It's
list, right?
also the idea that you were just available to do it because obviously you had Killer Queens going on, and then you have Kanto, and well, you might have had a little bit of a gap in between, and then you could take on a project because if you were in the middle of writing out Kanto 3 and Kanto 4, all of a sudden you might not have been able to necessarily take that position, and also it's not like they're going to delay the one shot.
To wait for me. Yeah.
It's complicated because sometimes it's not that you don't want to work on a project, it's that sometimes things just don't line up, and it gets tricky. Obviously I'm a big WWE fan. Sometimes wrestlers are not available to do movies because they're in a big feud on WWE, and well, either the movie has to wait or they find somebody else, and it happens in entertainment all the time. So it's very
Sure.
cool that happened.
Yeah. And it turned out it had to be a pretty quick turnaround, so I was able to sort of carve out that time and turn it around in the timeline that they wanted. So yeah, if it's not already out when this airs, it's coming soon, and go ahead and pick it up. The covers are by Christian Ward and Adam Gorham. Both of them are fantastic covers, so I'm super excited to add that to my collection. There's an intermixed foil cover for those collectors out there. There's a 1 in 25 and there's a 1 in 50, both of which are the clean covers without the trade dress, I believe. I haven't seen them yet, but
Yeah, no, I like that too, which that obviously I am a collector, I am an investor, and I love all sorts of variants. And
the 1
and
in 25, those 1 in 25s, man, those are the ones to put your money into, I feel like, just generally.
the 1 in 25s or the 250 print runs that come out are always the ones
Yeah.
to pick up. I'm a big 250, 100 print run guy. Obviously, from just an investment, I would love a 250 Kanto cover. I don't want a 1 in 25 Kanto. I want a 100 print run book. I think that would be phenomenal. But because I
Well,
think it
that's the
changed.
thing. It's that Canto 1, the first printing of Canto 1, 6,500 copies. So, assuming everybody, that exactly corresponds to the 1 in 10 ratio incentive cover we had. That means there's only 650
There's probably
out
even
there.
less. There's less.
I think so too.
So the way it works is that Curiosity, because and you might know the answer. Was there only the 1 in 10 for the first run?
Yes.
Okay, so there's less than 650 because in order to get that 1 in 10, you had to order 10 of those books per shop.
Right.
If you
Right. So that's what I'm saying is if there are 6,500 pre-orders,
it's less though because the reason why is that I don't know my
some
understanding
shops probably didn't order 10.
my understanding of variance is that if you order a 1 in 10, that means that you get if you order 10 regular covers, the 11th cover is that 1 in 10.
Right.
So now it counts against it even further. It's not a straight 10% equity of the total number. It's almost like a 9.8% equity.
Oh, I see what you're saying is that
The
in that
math
6,500, that's also counts the incentive covers, right?
so it's more like 9.8. There's only
Oh my God.
9.8% of that. So it's even less.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
There's a whole mathematical formula because if you go on Comic-Tron, they actually give you the full number and you actually have to apply the math. And then that number that you get is an estimation of the maximum number. It is a super fascinating formula and it's very basic math. But I go into that in a whole different way.
I
And I have
mean,
a 40-minute lecture on that topic alone.
look, I'm a lawyer and I'm a writer. Super simple math doesn't even come into the wheelhouse for me.
This is why I invented a formula for this.
Oh, perfect.
I solve these problems for people because I needed the problem solved myself. But that's a
I
whole
love that.
different ballgame in a whole different world. We'd be here for the next 2 hours if we went into the entire comic book investing and why you should buy a Kanto one now versus later. But anyhow,
There is a
I
dip in the market right now. I think you can get a Kanto 9.8 for not a lot. Well, not as much as it was. So
there's a dip. There's a dip in the market, but I have a feeling that dip is slightly artificial, and I think the dip is going to dip a little bit more, and then it's going to shoot back up come in the next
agreed.
2 years. Easy.
Agreed.
But it's so I can't wait to get my Kanto one. If it comes back as a 9.2 or higher, I am stoked. It's in pressing right now, and I'm hoping that CBCS knows what they're doing. But anyhow, I do want to change gears because I am curious because obviously cons are a disaster. I live on the East Coast. I'm not going to a convention because I am poor and I am cash poor right now, and my budget is tightened up a lot. On top of the fact that New York City is extremely draconian with what's going on, I also have a physical disability and I am more susceptible to COVID even with a vaccination. So I am just sitting out till next year,
Sure.
which I think is understandable. Not to mention that less people have money. I think less retailers have money to spend. And I think that, we're about to go through a very, very rough period for the next 6 months. And also, as we're heading into Christmas, I have to buy a bunch of people's gifts. And, well, every dollar matters to that point. And I'm thinking 4 months out to the problem. And so I'm curious how you feel about all this and where you think things are going without getting too political, just with the con world for the next.
Oh, I think, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I don't think there's going to be any publishers at New York Comic Con. I don't think that, I think cons are going to go forward, but they're going to be pared back. I think 2022, my guess is probably San Diego Comic Con in July is probably going to be the first con that we see back to closer to the way it was back in 2019. So I don't see us getting back to any quote unquote normal levels for conventions until the summer of next year. That's not to say conventions aren't going to go forward because they are. It's just when do publishers feel comfortable coming back and having the big booths, and
And when do creators feel comfortable coming back? And when do people like me feel comfortable? Because I bring a lot of money. I bring anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 to a convention, and I spend anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800 very easily, and that's a lot of money. And
Sure.
so I know people who spend way more than that. I know people who spend $8 grand at a con. But if I'm bringing $1,800 and legitly I have a 30-person list, that's a lot of commerce that's happening in a
Sure.
matter of 2.5 days. So
I think it's going to go one of two ways, Andrew. I think it's either going to be people are staying home and it's really kind of a ghost town, or people are sick of staying home and they come out, and it doesn't matter that there's not publishers there and it's limited number of creators are there and that sort of thing. They just are so desperate to want to get out there that they'll take, any sort of personal risks that they might perceive or whatever. And I tend to think probably leaning toward people coming out for it rather than not, based on my conversations. But that said, I mean, those conversations happened months ago when we didn't have to worry about the Delta variant or, reinstating safety measures or anything like that. So I think we're going to continue to live in this brave new world for another at least 6 months until late spring or summer of 2022. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to come back and have the coming out party that everybody has been hoping for at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, I think that San Diego Comic-Con next year is going to be more normal, and I think that we're not going to get full normalcy till 2023, but I think we're going to get more like 70 to 80% normalcy. But I also think that things are going to have to change moving forward. I mean, I'm part of the great digitalization pivot. I've been a part of it since March of 2020, and I'm not going back. This show is not going anywhere as far as once things go back to normal. This show is going to be doing 160 to 180 episodes every year because it's working, and I don't think it's going to back down. But obviously, it's not about me. It's about you today. So I do, and I said we're going to be about 50 minutes or slightly over, but I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself, because obviously I don't want to push too hard on Killer Queens or Kanto or Firefly, and there's a variety of other things I know you're working on as well. But obviously, what are you working on? Where can people bother you on the internet, following on Twitter, buying things? Obviously, I don't know if you have a web store, because I'd rather people buy what they need directly from you so that the money goes into your pocket. Otherwise, they should go to their local shop or go to the internet online comic shops. They are the lifeblood of this industry. And then if you can't find something, you want something, go on eBay lastly.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we went over Canto, Killer Queens, and the Firefly one-shot. There's more things coming on the pike that we're just a little bit early on, so I can't really share too many details on those yet. You can find Kanto on Instagram and Twitter at Kanto Comic. You can find Killer Queens on Instagram at Killer_Queens_comic. You can find me on Twitter at David Booher, on Instagram at David M. Booher. I have a website, davidbooher.com, which needs to be updated. I apologize to everybody profusely. The great digital revolution, right, Andrew? You can buy Killer Queens at any major comics retailer, and I do believe there are still copies available at tfaw.com and midtowncomics.com if you want to do online. And that's where we are. And come find me. I'm always available.
And obviously, I've been saying this, you have to support your comic creators at this point, your artists. And the way you do that is you actually buy their projects. You read their projects. If you have a website, or if you have a YouTube channel, you need to review those books. Killer Queens just came out. If you have a YouTube channel, you need to buy the book and review the book, and then actually tweet it out, either at Dark Horse, I should say. So I'm getting all my companies confused now.
Okay.
Or obviously to you, David Booher, or a variety of other people who are working on that project. Because A, it lets publishers know. It also lets people who say, oh man, I didn't even hear, this sounds really interesting. And that's happened on this show where obviously somebody shares an interview live that I'm doing, and literally 15 people have backed the Kickstarter because of it. People said, oh man, I didn't even know this book existed. It sounds awesome. Cool, let me go check it out. So obviously you have to go do that. You have to follow people on social media. You have to engage with them on social media. You got to like their Instagram, like their tweets, retweet what they're doing. And as I stated before, if I already didn't say it, buy their comics and actually read it, because it matters at this point. And it's not just the cover anymore or the speculation, but you have to engage in that. And so it's super, super important to do that. Also, for those watching, I do have Buy Me a Coffee. While I have a sponsor, I also am still fan supported in a lot of ways. So consider buying me a coffee. I need it. That's sort of like Patreon for those who are unaware of that. That's sort of what it is, as well as there is a variety of other stuff out there. And also support my sponsor, Mixum. Print a lot of cool comics. And I use my name, Andrew Davis. You get 5% off your order. And a bunch of my friends in the indie comic world are using them. And if you ever produce an indie comic, you're more than welcome to use them too.
All right.
It's coming. It's coming at some point. It's coming. And I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. So I'm going to be the first backer on your Kickstarter when you create one.
Oh, yeah. Drew and I are actually doing a project in the spring that's going to be a one-shot. That's going to be some sort of unique scenario that doesn't go through a publisher, but goes through somewhere else. And the current plan, I think, is throwing it up on Kickstarter. It's a horror book. And yes, we're going to need all the promotion that we can handle, we can get.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Drew wants to come into the Lions Den here, but season 3 is going, and
Yeah,
I'll get my sponsorship down a little bit cleaner. I'm the first person to say that. You were the guinea pig on that one, so everybody's gonna have to deal with that. But obviously, having said all that, as I'm glistening in the sun, it's very angelic of the sun to shine upon me, and possibly myself, because I really can't see my screen anymore. I'm gonna give you the final word.
Okay, write what you love, read what you love.
That's excellent advice, and more people need to do that. So on that note, I believe that is a wrap.